In lesson 6-2, you're going to learn to play exponent ball, but you will need your whiteboard and whiteboard marker to get started for today, and your math journal, as we will probably do a little bit of work in that as well. Would you please write the number 1 3/10 in the middle of your whiteboard? I'll do the first one with you. What I want you to do is write a decimal that is less than 1 3/10 and a number that is greater than. Okay, so would you write a decimal that is smaller or less than 1 3/10 and one that is greater than? So I could say 1 2/10, and one that would be greater would be maybe 2 7/100. All right, I am going to have you erase that, and at the top of your screen, write 4 9/10, and near the bottom in the middle, write 13 70/100. I want you to write a number that is smaller using a decimal, smaller than 4 9/10 and larger than 4 9/10. A decimal that is smaller than 13 70/100 and one that is larger than 13 70/100. Go ahead and pause your video. I could say 4 2/10 is less than, and 5 is greater than. I could say 13 59/100 is less than, and 13 72/100 is greater than. Erase your whiteboard. Let's take 7 18/100 at the top and middle of your board, and 10 11/100 at the bottom in the middle. This time, I want you to use a number that begins with 7, that is less than 7 18/100, and a decimal that begins with 7 that is greater than 7 18/100. Same thing with 10 11/100. A decimal that starts with 10 that is less than 10 11/100, and a decimal that begins with 10 that is greater than 10 11/100. Pause your video. Well, I could say 7 9/100 is less than, and 7 22/100 is greater than. 10 1/10 is less than, and 10 12/10 is greater than. All right, on your whiteboard still, we're not yet into our math journals. Put the following expressions in order from least to greatest. Least to greatest. So if you remember, might help for you to write that 3 times 10 to the 4th. Remember 3 with 4 zeros behind it. 4 times 10 to the 3rd is 4 with, with 3 zeros behind it. Ooh, 3 divided by 10 to the 4th. Remember, 3 is the same thing as 3 0/10. Remember, when we're dividing by a decimal and we're using exponents, it moves to the left. If we're multiplying, the decimal point moves to the right. So if I'm dividing by 10 to the 4th, remember the decimal point's going to move to the left 4 places. If I take 4, which is the same as 4 0/10, divided by 10 to the 3rd, remember the decimal point's going to move to the left 3 places. So put those in order and be a person of integrity. That means you can be trusted even when nobody's watching, because you're forming who you are, your character. All right, if you figured this one out, 1 2 3 4, And this one would be 1, 2. Now, if I put those in order from smallest to largest, in other words, 3 divided by 10 to the 4th power is the smallest. 4 divided by 10 to the 3rd power is the next smallest. 4 times 10 to the 3rd would be the next smallest. And the largest would be 10 to the 4th. Notice that the division ones show up as the smallest and the multiplication would be the largest. So compare the expressions 1 and 5/10 times 10 to the 2nd and 5 and 1/10 divided by 10 to the 2nd power. Which one would be larger without figuring it out? Well, anytime you're going to multiply, it's going to become larger than 1. Anytime you divide, it's going to be smaller than 5. So 1 and 5/10 times 10 to the 2nd would be 150, excuse me. 5 and 1/10 divided by 10 to the 2nd power is 1, 2. All right, when you play Exponent Ball today, you are going to play on McGraw-Hill Connect Ed. It will give you directions of how to play. This is the paper version of it, but just to give you an idea, you have a goal line on each end of, think of it as a football field, right? If your expression ends up being between 10,000ths, you move backwards 15 yards. So if you're at the 50-yard line, you would move back 40 to the 35. And you can see the different scores here. Kicks, the value of the roll, shows you how far you move the ball forward. Okay, and you'll be able to keep track on your McGraw-Hill app. Make sure you practice playing this as you will be playing with someone later in the week. Before you play the game Exponent Ball, let's continue on page 199 in your math journal. Practicing fraction division. For each problem, write a number model using a letter for the unknown. That's called a variable. Solve and show your solution strategy with a drawing or other model. Check your answer using multiplication and write a number sentence to show how you checked. So number 1, Selena has 6 inches of tape to attach photos to her display board. If she cuts the tape into half-inch pieces, how many pieces will she have? So she starts with 6, right? She divides it into half-inch pieces, and that's what we're solving for. So I'll put P for pieces. I'm going to start with a number line. I'm going to call this 0, call this 6, and go 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch, 5 inch. But it's not inches that she divides it into. Remember, it's half an inch. So I'm going to go ahead and divide each one of those inches into half. So go ahead with your pencil, and we're going to say, okay, here's 1/2 an inch, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. she'll have 12 half-inch pieces. How can I check? Well, I'm going to take 12 times 1/2, okay, which is 12 halves, which how many times does 2 go into 12? 6. Number 2, Heather has 1/4 of a watermelon. If she shares the watermelon equally with her brother and sister, how much watermelon will each person get? So she's taking 1/4 of a watermelon and dividing it among 3 people, right? Her brother, her sister, and Heather. And we're going to figure out how much each person would get for the watermelon. So I'm going to take the watermelon, I'm going to make it square, and I'm going to divide it into 4 equal sections first. Remember, she only has 1/4 of that watermelon, so go ahead and shade in 1/4. But then she's going to divide it among 3 people. So then I have to divide that watermelon in thirds as well. And she divides, and she shades in 1/3 of that, right? Or a third of that. So each person will get what? Only 1/12 of the watermelon. How do I check that? 1/12 times 3 equals 3/12, which is the same thing if I divide each one by 3, is the same as 1/4. Continuing down the page, Mr. Middleton has a 1/2 box of colored paper. He wants to split the paper equally among 5 table groups for an art project. How much paper will each table get? So we're going to take that 1/2 box, write this in your math journal, and divide it between the 5 table groups. We'll see how much paper they each get. Let's take that pack of colored paper. Let's divide it in 1/2 because he only has 1/2 of it. The shaded part shows me he has 1/2 of the paper packet, but then he has to divide that amount into 5 groups. How much will 1 out of those 5 groups get? Right, because this would be group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4, group 5. Each one will get, there are 10 boxes, each group gets 1/10. So then I'll take 1/10 each group gets times 5 groups. Is it the same thing as 5/10, which is equal to 1/2. And lastly, 1 box of raisins contains 2 cups. A serving is 1/4 of a cup. How many servings are in 1 box? Here's box 1, 1 cup, box 1, 2nd cup, and they're each in 1/4 cup serving. So I'm going to take each one of those cups and divide it into 4 equal parts. The number model is 2 cups divided into 1/4 of a cup per serving. I'll put R for raisins. So I have 1/4, 1/4. That equals 1 full cup. That equals 2 cups. So how many servings are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How do I check that? Well, there are 8 servings times 1/4 equals 8 fourths, which, how many 4s are there in 8? 2. All right, don't forget to go into McGraw-Hill and play Exponent ball.